For this video, I thought it'd be a cool idea to talk through who the hardest heroes are to play in Overwatch. I think a lot of people really focus on the mechanics aspect and forget to leave in some other things that make a certain hero impactful. So I'm going to put a little more weight onto those. So I guess I should start with that. We have, of course, mechanics, and that really comes down to the speed at which you have to play your hero and how much risk is associated with your shots. Meaning someone like Soldier would get less points in how I'm ranking things because he can shoot and afford to miss a few bullets. Then the level of teamwork needed for a hero to find impact, and just give an example, Sombra depends a lot on our team to follow up on manual hacks and EMP. Typically these heroes rely on a bit more of comms to set up plays, calling out targets, scouting, rotations, etc. And the overall ease of a hero refers to the leniency for how strict you can play. So tanks will lose a lot of points on that side of things because it's way harder for them to die given their HP pool. This also means abilities that give some escapability or defensive utility like Immortality Field and Wraith is also factored in. As you can see, we have the tier list in front of us. It goes from 1 star to 5 stars. It's kind of a revamp to the current Overwatch star rating system that has 3 stars, and basically having more of them allows me to separate each hero into more specialized tiers, if you will. Anyways, I'm just going to give a brief definition of what each of these tiers are and what makes a hero applicable. So the 1-star group are heroes that have the ease of use, very simple to understand how to play while also not being mechanically intensive. 2-star heroes have to be more strict with their ability usage. Maybe there's some subtle differences in how you fulfill your role, playing around more of your prominent weak spots. For 3-star heroes, there's a clear need to be good at either mechanics requiring a base level of teamwork, or there's some limiting factors, or as in their kit is not very strong, and basically meaning that the hero is not very easy to play. 4-star heroes require 2 of those categories mentioned, or the hero might also be really hard to use mechanically, 5-star worthy, but the power of their kit, as in the ease of use, loses them a few points. And you'll notice there's quite a few heroes that fit that bill. Lastly, 5-star heroes are the ones that need a lot of mechanical skill and aren't very easy to play. You can't make a lot of mistakes with them. You could also say they're extremely team dependent because they need so much help to cover their weaknesses. That's logic in that, still very much generalized, but you'll see what I mean. Alrighty then, starting off with our 1-star heroes, I'm just gonna lay them all out wherever they are. There he is. Okay, Torbjorn, Mercy, Moira, Soldier, and Junkrat. All these heroes have one thing in common: they're very easy to pick up and play, and still get a lot of value from them. If you did notice, I ranked these guys in specific order, so it's going to be kind of linear for how it's going to be. So what I'm basically saying is that Torbjorn, I think, is the easiest hero. Of course, mechanics doesn't really matter to Torb. He will just place down his turret, and it'll do most of the heavy lifting. Sure, landing your Cheetos is something that you might need in GM, but most of the time you're just going to be spamming chokes. So what makes Moira edge out Torb, I think, is the fact that she's a support and needs to think about where she's putting her resources towards. It's literally just that slight difference, because I think going into DPS mode, where you just shoot everyone you see, it's going to be that one thing where you look at Torbjorn, his entire role is just to shoot everyone and deal a bunch of damage, where Moira has to think about where she's like going to throw her healing orb, or whether or not she's going to throw a damage orb. So like I said, very binary in how she plays: heal, do healing orb, damage, do damage orb. And as for mechanics, you can't really argue which one is better or worse, because like Moira's primary and secondary fire, whatever you call it, the effective radius that she has on those it's so big that it shouldn't be too hard to track. Now, speaking of mechanics, Mercy doesn't need any of those. All she has is a beam that locks on to either heal or damage boost, and there is a setting that you can switch to toggle her beam so you don't even have to hold your left click or right click. Yeah, knowing how to do super jump or other Mercy techs and being fluid with your guardian angel to be more evasive, since after all you are a pretty big target priority. Realistically though, that's the difference between a diamond Mercy and a gold Mercy. So Junkrat is going to be spamming chokes for frontline pressure, maybe bouncing the grenades off walls to deal splash damage to a backliner or two. It's not that hard to do. If not shooting shields, then he's flanking and lining up grenade plus a mine for the one-shot combo, or you could also use a trap and place a mine on top, wait for someone to walk on it, and there's another free kill. Shoot your bullets, spam helix rockets. If you feel threatened, run. You got biotic field, so yeah. I could see the argument for him being 2 stars because he has a pinpoint accuracy, not like the weapon spread like he once had, so having the smooth aim is a skill. But I mean, it takes like what, 10 matches to kind of figure out the recoil and have that smooth tracking? Our first 2-star hero is Reaper. Understanding how to play him is 1-star. Shoot your shotgun, steal a bunch of damage up close, but that is exactly one of his weaknesses. Reaper can be outranged by many heroes, so utilizing TP to close that distance without being too exposed, hint hint, and also the usage of Wraith is key because you don't want to use it for the speed boost out of spawn, just wasting it because without that he's just as vulnerable as other squishies. There are things a Reaper player must think about, that's my point. Roadhog kind of lives or dies whether or not he's getting hooks for the one shot, so that's the mechanic side. Other than that, Hog has 600 HP and can restore 300 of it with Take a Breather. Orisa's whole playstyle is sitting behind a shield and trying to spam out her green bubblegum. I'll give her a few points on the game sense of knowing where you should place your shield and hold on certain positions. For both of these heroes, Kree and Bap, certainly you can talk about the level of mechanics you need, but what really degrades them and drops them a few tiers is the amount of tools they have. Kree could easily be 4 stars if he didn't have Flashbang, but because he does, plus Fan the Hammer, he can cheese some duels. Bap, same thing. Landing direct hits with the healing launcher can be hard due to the projectile nature and the arc it has. And when you have to start DPSing, the aim skill is on par with Soldier. But Immortality Field, a deployable granting his team invulnerability, and Exo Boots as a passive ability that allows you to jump onto any high ground, sometimes being a simple way to escape dives, and heroes with a lack of mobility, and those are what really makes him powerful. Wrapping up the 2-star or 2-star heroes, Bastion is one that I kind of flip-flopped on between 3-star and 2-star, and I think that kind of solidified it for me was that if I'm looking at this from Bastion's perspective, all he's doing is just shooting. You also have to remember he has 300 HP, some of which is armor, Ironclad as a passive that gives him, I think, 20% resistance while in turret form, and self-repair on top of that. So his base stats are pretty high compared to other heroes. His biggest drawback, and why I considered him being a 3-star hero in the first place, is that Bastion is a sitting duck in turret form, and he does depend on his team to give him resources and sustain him so that he hopefully can deal more damage and kill the enemies first before they kill him. But after all, he is sitting still, so it shouldn't be too difficult to do that. Placing a shield too, it's one button. That's a give and take of it all. Alrighty then, 3-star hero. Wait, actually, she's lower. Oops. Just read my tier list and I was like, that's not right. So yeah, Brig, mechanics, and the simplicity of her kit is no question 1-star, some will say 0. But if I were to make an argument for Brig being 3 stars, it's the fact that she is a team-dependent hero in the sense that she needs her team to be disciplined with their positioning. And another huge downside to Brig is that she is only effective in short ranges. Other than repair packs which allow you to heal across the map, you only have 3 charges, and the best use for those is to chuck out 2 or 3 to pocket a DPS, giving them that lingering healing effect to make them comfortable in the duel. After that, you don't have enough to help and support the other crew, so where Brig finds most of her value in healing is from Inspire, and her team needs to be in close proximity to get any of that. And as you guys might know, in those metal ranks, people kind of do their own thing. Now again, if you play into Brig's strengths in those close quarters areas, she has Whipshot, Bash, a shield to protect herself, or the support duo if you're trying to focus her, and she has the potential to punish you. So the simplest counter against Brig is to play anyone who can shoot from mid to long range. Hanzo and Ashe, who are our actual 3-star heroes, they are both heroes that need the skills to land shots to be effective. Although they do suffer from the same thing like Kree and Bap, they just have a lot of stuff that really empowers them. Hanzo has wall hacks to communicate without communicating, Storm Arrows as a tank buster, dumping out a bunch of damage, and wall climb that allows him to get to high grounds. Leap is just a nice addition in my opinion. Ashe has Dynamite for great bursts and AoE damage, plus Coach Gun for mobility. Comparing the two, why I think Ashe is harder, Despite the hit scan to Hanzo's projectile, the Viper, which is Ash's gun by the way, the reload management, I guess you could call it, is a legitimate thing about Ash's gun. There have been times where if you're not spending time reloading after a few shots, the moments where you need a bullet to finish off a target, or when you're dove by a Genji and you have to reload at that instant, it's just so painful. So I'm not kidding that it's a challenge with Ash. Either way though, I don't care if you flip-flop between these two, they're both pretty similar. Ash also has Bob, so there's another talking point. D.Va, Rein, and Zarya are all gradients of the exact same thing. Their stats are just too good. D.Va, I could argue, is more tanky than Wrecking Ball with adaptive shields. Granted, it would just be the base shields only getting him that extra 100 HP. So just thinking, Ball has 700 HP, D.Va has 600, and 300 of it is armor. And just doing some math in my head, the effective HP is probably close to 800. Like, that's insane. I could just say that's a 1-star hero just based on that. But the funny thing is that her job requires 5 stars. Talking about diamond and up, more or less. Her kit is so strong that you can probably climb to diamond pretty easily. What D.Va's role is, though, is to deny value and eat up every cooldown that is lobbed your way. But also you need to think about protecting your allies when they're under pressure. But also you need to deal with that sniper on high ground. But also you need to use defense matrix to help your Winston leap in. And yeah, that's a lot of things to keep track of. And when I looked at the pros and cons, it did land her at the 3-star hero rank tier. Rein is Rectangle Man, being the spearhead to lead his team into battle and anchor positions to set up for his team for success. And it does take a high level of game sense to pull this off successfully. What helps is that he's a tank with 600 shield HP, and if you manage your shield and mix in some swings, that's all it takes. Zarya requires similar but easier management skills as Rein to shield as Zarya with bubbles. Figuring out when is the best time to use bubbles and who should I save the bubble for, maybe defensively or pocketing a doom so you won't get CC'd to death. But once you figure out the flow of the hero, then playing Zarya at a high energy is a simple win condition. And these next 4 heroes that are coming up are all team-dependent heroes. Mei has a utility kit and kind of needs that Rein tandem to be successful, as he enables you with a shield and you enable him with the frontline pressure and that you can apply with wall and your freezeway. I've taken into account that she has a way to solo carry with Blizzard and a self-sustain, which although can be your own trap sometimes. Sim definitely needs protection in order to maximize her potential, to allow her to get close to enemies to charge up beam, and then once that happens, slowly win out the battle through attrition as you melt down the opponents. Turrets, for sure, when placed in awkward spots, can be a dumb way for her to stump and likely tilt a team, but her vulnerability outweighs that. Next up, Pharah has to absolutely rely on a Mercy pocket. I have played without a Mercy, and those are only in maps where there's vertical cover to stick close to, and you're trying to play as far away as possible, out of line of sight of hit scan, unless of course you spot an opportunity to dive bomb. I think she's a controversial hero when it comes to how hard it is to play Pharah, especially considering when you have a Mercy pocket, so I'm just going to leave it at that. And Sombra is a hero that has no way to get instant value. She hacks, waits for her team to capitalize, and in the background, you'll just be doing some chip damage. Farm up tanks for EMP, same thing. Once the EMP goes off, wait for your team to capitalize, and that's your whole playstyle. The odd time you can catch a lone enemy walking from spawn to get that sneak attack, or even by themselves on a high ground, but half of the time you won't get the kill because someone peeled for them, or you fearing your life, you translocate out. Because don't forget, you are squishy too. Okay, now we get into the upper echelon of heroes. I don't think there's... This next one might be a controversial one, but I don't think you can deny that Widowmaker is a hero that requires a lot of mechanical skill, because if you don't land those headshots, then you're useless as a hero. Why is she a 4-star and not a 5-star? Well, in my opinion, I think once you get a decent feel for how she plays, she could kind of just break the game. Just shoot from a long range where no one can contest her, and then just pop a shot, get a first pick, and you win the fight. At that point, her 175 HP and her long cooldown of her grapple doesn't really matter too much if you can just go to any spot, take an angle, and find a pick. Sigma is a hero that I like to think of a lot of, it's very similar to D.Va and how they play. They need to think about a lot of these different aspects. And honestly, just everything I said about D.Va applies to Sigma. The only difference is that Sigma doesn't have as crazy stats as D.Va does. Lots of tools, yes, but how you use them is not so easy to understand. Doomfist, everything about him, 5 stars. Except for the fact that everything about his kit and how you use him to function takes 3 buttons. I don't think there's much of a debate with him because everyone knows that he's just this high mechanical hero. You look at anyone who just picks him up for the first time expecting him to be an easy hero. He's not. He uses his face to engage, first of all, so he's very vulnerable to CC without support from a Zarya bubble or something. And because Doomfist is a hypermobile DPS, movement is practically everything about him. You need to think about where you're going to get in, get out as fast as possible. Knowing the Doom techs, if you don't know any of them, it's going to be really hard to fulfill your boom or bust playstyle. Winston is really only up here because he's just a very vulnerable tank compared to the other guys. Probably a 1-star, 2-star level mechanics where he can be punished by his leap. It's on a 6-second cooldown, so if there's a way that you can burst his bubble or try and force him out of it, that's your opportunity to try and burn him down. But again, mechanics, not really too much of a factor for him. It's the fact that his entire kit doesn't find a lot of value. Like, he just does a lot of AoE damage. He doesn't have any burst or anything like that. He's a very stable tank, but he does require his team to help him out for sure. And as for our last tank pick, it's Wrecking Ball. I don't think there's too much of a bias. Well, maybe just a little. But practically everything I can say about Doomfist applies to Ball. Like, his kit, it just takes a couple of buttons in order to perform. The movement is going to be a high priority to like learn and get good with, to be that like evasive ball and be that one that kind of is that disruptor that annoys you but also gets out so you can never really punish him. I think what people forget about is that Wrecking Ball is a tank, and I like to give the example that Wrecking Ball is Reinhardt. He's this shield roaming around the map. The issue is that it's a shield that's not protecting the rest of his team. The only way for Ball to fulfill that main tank position, and is very unorthodox compared to any other hero, any tank in the game, and that's through his disruption. So he's using his boop to dislodge different defensive setups or even offensive pushes, so that they have a way worse position, and then his team can capitalize off of it. And there are cases like in Watchpoint Gibraltar where people are on high grounds where he can just free up space by booping them off that high ground, allowing his team to take that space. So hopefully that gives some of those Wrecking Ball haters some things to consider about how hard he is to play, because we have feelings too. And also just an extra pointer. For hardness scale wise, he also uses his face to engage like Doomfist, so there you go. CC hurts, okay? Stop CC now. Anyways, Echo. I think you can make a connection between Echo and Doomfist, except for the fact that Doomfist has like push button and it does the thing, versus Echo, she still needs to land sticky bombs in order to have that, I was going to say privilege, that's not the right word, but anyways, privilege to commit onto an enemy. So there's kind of that little period where there's not a guarantee. And I mean, Focusing Beam won't find any value unless there's a half HP, usually squishy, but half HP target. So unlike Doom's Punch that can one-shot, she has to wait for that 50% HP target so that she can commit the Focusing Beam. Otherwise, it's going to be doing nothing. Lucio can go both ways. Either he's one of the most mechanically intensive heroes because he's doing that Reddit Lucio, going for boops, going for solo plays as a DPS, or he's going to play that support role, using the speed boost and timing that speed boost with his team to try and enable a Reinhardt or a dive or something like along the lines of that. Ana, The only reason why she is a 4-star hero is that her abilities are just too strong. Her sleep dart, like if you land that onto someone, disabling them for 5 seconds, that can be super long, and that could also set up for your own death. And Biotic Nade, if you're not using that offensively, you're doing something wrong, because it's so powerful if you land it onto a group of enemies, disabling the healing. That basically takes out 2 supports for that time being. Like, they're useless. So in a well-coordinated environment, that's an instant win in most cases. They see that, and that just makes them drool. Okay, for the moment we've all been waiting for, the 5-star heroes. The worst of the best is Zenyatta. Yeah, I don't know what to say, because Zen is like the epitome of a glass cannon. You just can't leave that guy alone. He's going to be robbed or something. Like, he's going to get bullied. It's not fair. If you look at all these heroes, they have some sort of ability that gives them some way of escaping or being defensive. Zen has nothing of that kind. And both of those don't find instant value. They just set up a certain play. Now, I guess the only defensive option you have is your mechanics and whether or not you can land your shots. I did kind of throw Zen in the honorable mention category. It's just, I couldn't rate Zen higher than these next 2 heroes, which are Tracer and Genji. Genji, in my opinion, is the hardest hero, but starting off with Tracer, why I think she is the second hardest hero to play, and that's because every single aspect of her kit requires some level of mechanics. Even Pulse Bomb is not a guarantee unless you stick it. You gotta manage your blinks, because if you blink twice and recall and you're in a bad position, you don't have any blinks to get out, and you could be easily burst upon just because you have 150 HP. Your whole kit revolves around being evasive, so again, just have to be aware of your blinks. People always think the poor person who has to deal with the Tracer. Well, the Tracer also has to figure out the aiming as well. Like, it's not too easy to do that. You have to blink and then like adjust your aim. I don't know. I just don't think anyone. Yeah, no brainer for me. And then for our hardest hero, to top it all off, Genji, everything I explained in when I defined the 5-star heroes applies to Genji. I guess the best way to explain this is look at Echo to Genji. Everything about them is a very similar style in how they're designed, and their playstyle too are very, very close. Just by making a T-chart of the abilities of Echo to Genji and comparing them, you'll find that Genji is just a less reliable form of Echo. Yeah, sure, mobility. It's got its own pros and cons. He's got wall climb, Echo doesn't. Fly versus just a double jump. Then primary fire, okay, that's very similar too. But then all of a sudden you realize that Genji has deflect and Echo has sticky bombs. I thought, again, Genji was supposed to be this hyper-mobile DPS assassin, and he's got deflect. You're not going to find a lot of those plays where you deflect a grab or anything like that. The deflect is strictly a defensive ability. Alright, and then Swift Strike to Focusing Beam. That's the difference. Focusing Beam. 50% HP, okay, there's that condition that needs to be met in order for it to be effective. Is it too difficult? You find your opportunities. But it's sure easy to secure a pick with Focusing Beam than Swift Strike. Swift Strike only does 50 damage, and it's 50 damage once. It doesn't have a duration to it. It has that weird function that if you get an elim, it resets your dash cooldown so you can dash again instantly. It's hard to use Genji because you're trying to find that opportunity when you can go in. You have to look for that low HP target so that you can dash in and dash out. That's the whole point of Swift Strike. But it's really hard to do that, and so you're going to be forced to just use Swift Strike out. And it's a very defensive use of that. Like, that's your escape. It's not an offensive tool, that's an escape in most circumstances. And hopefully I made it clear that Genji is the hardest hero. I don't think there's too much of a debate between these two at least being in the 5-star heroes for being the hardest heroes. Zen, sure, you can put him 4-star because he's a team dependent. I didn't weigh that too heavily. It was kind of like a nod, honestly. But again, hopefully all these reasonings and it gives you some sort of semblance for how I rated these guys. So yeah, anyways, hope you all enjoyed. This was a fun video to make. I like making these discussion videos. It probably provides no value in the game. It's just a nice discussion topic. Let me know what you guys think about this tier list here. If you want to put a hero higher or lower, I don't know. Doesn't really matter. I like the discussion of it all, like I said. But yeah, until then, I'll see you when I see you. Peace.